You know, we have a statement from the president. We have reaction from the Trump campaign. But right now, the president is playing golf at his golf course in Virginia. And that's a shot from the Associated Press. As this announcement has been made that Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States, we know that the Trump campaign is saying, hold on, we're fighting the legal battle. Our projection is our projection. Let's bring in Chief White House Correspondent John Roberts. John, what are you hearing?
Sorry, I had Rudy Giuliani on the phone. I'll get back to him in just a moment. Obviously, the Trump campaign knew that this was happening. And I also know that if I was the president, I wouldn't be making a lot of putts right now. The Trump campaign obviously knew that this was coming because they had a statement that was ready to go when this news came down. The president claiming that Joe Biden is rushing to claim victory and that he's doing that and that there is complicity with the media to hide the truth. The president basically indicating that this does not end it, at least not for him. A statement from the president through the campaign saying, quote, beginning Monday, our campaign will start prosecuting our case in court to ensure election laws are fully upheld and the rightful winner is seated. The American people are entitled to an honest election. That means counting all legal ballots and not counting any illegal ballots. This is the only way to ensure that the public has full confidence in our election. The president also started out the day defiant, and Twitter sort of checking him along the way. A couple of tweets to share with you. The president tweeting, quote, I won this election by a lot. A disclaimer was slapped on that tweet by Twitter. The president in another tweet saying people were screaming, stop the count, we demand transparency. As legal observers, we will refuse admittance to count rooms. That tweet was censored by Twitter. And then another one, tens of thousands of votes were illegally received after 8 p.m. on Tuesday, Election Day, totally and easily, changing the results in Pennsylvania and certain other razor-thin states. As a separate matter, hundreds of thousands of votes were illegally not allowed to be observed. That tweet censored by Twitter as well. But this is the argument that the president is going to make going forward. It's going to be about vote counting. It's going to be about access to vote. It's going to be about what votes will be allowed to be counted. Samuel Alito, Justice of the Supreme Court, yesterday issued an order to Pennsylvania to sequester all ballots that came in after 8 p.m. That was the subject of a case that was before the Supreme Court. We don't know, though, how many ballots came in after 8 o'clock on Election Day. We don't know who they were cast for, so we do not know if that would change the results of the election. President Trump certainly seems to think that it will. But the short statement from the president is that this does not end it for him. There doesn't appear to be any intention on the president's behalf to concede, only to fight on. One of the problems he's got right now is that he doesn't have a legal team that he thinks is high-powered enough to really make a credible case before the American people on this, and that is the other 74 million people who did not vote for him. So I'm hearing that they're trying to beef up the legal team with some big names. The former Attorney General of the United States, Michael Mukasey, may be on that list of people that they're trying to get. But we'll see going forward, because somebody like Mukasey, before he ever signed on to something like this, I'm told by people who are in this team that the president has put together to try to fight this, would want to see some real hard evidence that there were, in fact, voting irregularities. We had that list of 3,000 people in Nevada who were said to have voted illegally because they didn't satisfy the residency requirements in Nevada. That case was thrown out by a federal district judge yesterday. So that's one loss for them. There have been other smaller losses that they've had. So mounting this case that there were mass irregularities or there are huge tranches of votes that should be not be allowed to be counted, that's going to require a lot of hard evidence. And in order to get some real high-powered legal help, sort of the caliber of James Baker in the Bush campaign in 2000, is going to require the Trump campaign to hit a pretty high bar when it comes to all of that. Now, just some observations here. Arizona is still getting closer as the vote count comes in. We don't know if the Trump campaign will be able to meet the projections that they say will put the president in the lead there. The most likely places that we're going to see vote recounts that the president will fight tooth and nail will be in Georgia. In fact, Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State of Georgia, has already suggested that there is going to be a recount there. The president also likely to try to go for a recount in Pennsylvania, though we don't know what the margins are going to be. I'm also hearing that there might be something in Wisconsin that they may challenge on. So all of this will unfold in the days going forward. One thing I should point out, though, if Joe Biden wants to be the president of all of the people, he's got 70 million people who voted for President Trump. So that's going to be a big lift for Joe Biden as well. But I'm sure that he will, if he becomes president, try as hard as he can to do that. Brett, Martha?
Thank you, John.